Hi everyone, welcome to Value. So today we're going to look at RKLB because they have just hit it out of the park. Like today's presentation came out, the results of the financial results were on target. The most important part was they have a massive pipeline of launches to come, and I've just signed up some really big contracts, especially the Kinesis one, which is 5 missions with about 25 satellites that they're going to send to space, but that won't happen until 2023. So in terms of where does this put us today, in terms of we're looking at the share price today and going, this is a company that's trading at $20.72 with about 448 million shares on outstanding. That puts this company at about $9.2 billion in market valuation today. And they're expecting in this financial year about $50 million in revenue. So $50 million in the scheme of things isn't too much. Like $50 million and you're worth $9 billion. That is trading at a very high sales multiple. But I think the community is also looking at this and going, especially space industry is difficult. There's a lot of companies that want to do this and are still not succeeding after a few launches. So basically we have a company that is of a very high caliber. They have massive contracts. Next year they're expecting about 150 million or even 160 million in revenue based on their forecast last year, which would be about 200% growth on the forecast revenues this year. Though they reckon they could actually exceed the $50 million mark. 50 million for this year is, on their view, conservative because they don't want to give any big numbers in the current situation because it is their very first time on the public markets. They want to kind of beat their own expectations because they've already had to reduce their guidance by 10 to 15 million dollars, so they don't want to put out another big number and then miss that again, because if they have 2 downgrades, that's pretty bad. So they want to probably have a downgrade and then hopefully have an upgrade from that. So I expect them to do just above 50, like maybe around 50 to 55 million. If not, they could potentially do more if they can squeeze in more launches. But if we work off the base of 50 million in revenue and then say they get to 150 million next year, that would be a 200% gain on revenues this year. And the question is, if they do 150 million in revenue next year, does that justify it being a $9 billion company today? Like in the scheme of things, I think people are looking actually further than next year. They're looking at this being the next best company apart from SpaceX, and I'd thoroughly agree. This company is doing everything in the highest quality. They are sending rockets to space at such a pace that you got to be impressed with, particularly how difficult it is. They are getting into parts. They are looking at making about 2,000 reaction wheels a year, which is only a sign for things to come, because if they get into reaction wheels today, what do they get into tomorrow, So it leaves the door open for these guys to get into many different businesses in terms of making parts. They can, and because they have the expertise of sending satellites into space, nothing precludes them from basically getting into other businesses, just like SpaceX has gotten into the business of internet by starting up Starlink. Like if you look at RKLB's recent contract with Kinesis, which was sending 25 satellites over 5 missions, and Kinesis is a company specializing in the Internet of Things. You could easily see RKLB sending their own satellites in the future and doing their own Internet of Things as well. So I guess that's something you got to just keep in mind, that hey, this company has so much potential because they've broken down so many barriers that basically the world's their oyster. everything really depends on how enthused they are in terms of entering other businesses. Currently, they're so busy with their launch business and just getting into this the parts business as well, that I don't think they're going to be that focused in starting anything new for now. But it leaves the opportunity that, hey, if things start to dry up in terms of business for launch or parts, that they could actually start doing their own thing. So the company just has many options available ahead of it, which means the value of this company is just massive going forward. In terms of expectations, we recently just had an analyst cover this company, and they have put a $30 price tag on the company, which is in a sense quite realistic. So what they've basically said is that basically Rocket Lab is the most prolific commercial launch operator next to SpaceX, which is quite true, because apart from SpaceX, there is no other company in this space as high quality as Rocket Lab. But then we also have to balance it in terms of, hey, where the revenue's at right now, because I think SpaceX, their revenues are in the billions and are worth 74 billion in terms of valuation. So they don't actually trade in terms of that high of a multiple. They trade probably at a 30 to 40 multiple, which is in a sense quite low compared to what Rocket Lab is trading at. Rocket Lab is basically trading at basically at a 50 million revenue forecast right now. You're looking at Rocket Lab trading above basically 180 times revenue. So in terms of that, the revenue multiple is really high, but of course we're going to be looking at the things going forward into the future. If you look at it as in the future that this company achieves 150 million in terms of revenue, basically you would be looking at them trading at around about 60 times their revenue. So I think at the current trading price, everyone is looking, they've got one step in the present, but also one step in the future as well. And it's hard not to have a futuristic mindset when it comes to these type of companies, because these type of companies are never going to be selling at a cheap price, which is why you have to look ahead and basically buy the pricing that kind of justifies that future potential, of course. But so far, pretty pleased with what's happened. 37% is amazing. I think potentially we will see some profit taking eventually. If not, I think you should probably consider taking at least a little profit, because we can never guarantee where the share price goes. Of course, it can go up as well. We did just get a $30 price tag as well. So I think if you believe in this company for the long term and you have the time to wait, then it can be worth just keeping your shares for the longer term and then seeing that higher pricing. But if you don't think you have a long-term horizon and you might need to use the money for a different purpose, then it is very, very much worth considering that you want to take some profit off the table, particularly the fact that this share has gone up well over 100% in the space of a week. But apart from that, I think everything in the current situation is very, very justified in a sense. I couldn't see Rocket Lab selling ever again at that $10 price tag. But at $20 price tag, is it justified? I think it's in a sense justified for the future it brings. But if I was to look at the financials, I'd say it might have gotten ahead of itself a little bit, because next quarter they only expect $4 to $5 million in revenue for quarter 3. And in quarter 4 they're expecting about 17 million. So we already know what's happening in the next 6 months in terms of revenue forecast. So the numbers for the next 6 months are not going to be that impressive. The only impressive thing will be they're going to be going to the moon with NASA, which is going to be amazing. So I think apart from that big event, you might have quite a quiet time, and I think during that quiet time, particularly with stocks, there usually is a big profit-taking period, especially when things get quiet and everyone starts selling down. So there is that kind of thing, those kind of things to be wary of. But apart from that, next year I think the company is going to be a wonderful company going forward. So it's a matter of, do you hold until, do you have the time to hold until next year, or are you just looking to hold for the short term? Then you have to make decisions according to your own financial profile, of course. Let me know what your thoughts about the company is. Are you happy about today's price? What's your price target? Or if you've got any questions, post below. Until then, good luck investing, everyone.